What's poppin', fam? Welcome to Don't Touch My Mindset, a podcast that is designed to uplift, inspire, and motivate you, and most importantly, share tools to help you protect that mindset. See, and it works good this time. Yo, we were having technical difficulties. I'm super excited to be here with you guys. What is poppin', fam? I have an amazing guest with me today, a part of the Amplify speaker series that we're doing here on Don't Touch My Mindset. Now, this one's going to model a little bit of pivotal moments because I've never had this guest on the podcast. She's an amazing business owner, a leader, entrepreneur based in Arizona, doing things for that community. She is the founder and CEO of Dry in the Desert. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ellie St. Aubin. Did I say it right, St. Aubin?
Yep, you got it.
Awesome.
Thank you. Super excited to be here. And yeah, my first time on your podcast, but not the first time or last time that we'll be getting together, seeing each other. So I'm excited for the Amplify workshop for sure.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that. That's coming up next week. If you haven't gotten your tickets, just hit the link in the show note. You'll be able to get your tickets. VIP, buy one, bring somebody for free. It's part of the Pay Forward initiative where you get to pay your growth forward to somebody who would benefit from you being the best version of you. So just remember that in mind when you visit the website and you're thinking about coming to the workshop. Who would you bring with you? Who would benefit from your version, from you being the best version of you? But all that aside, I was so inspired by Ellie and what she does. I was like, yo, I got to bring you on the podcast. I got to make you part of this speaker series. Ellie, please tell the people, one, who are you and what do you do?
Awesome. Thanks. So yeah, I'm Ellie and I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I've lived here most of my life and it's my home. So I started this business really as a side project called Dry in the Desert, and was just all about getting people together to have alcohol-free fun. I stopped drinking myself and went through many years of that process of finding what worked for me, of trying to make alcohol work in my life, and when realizing it didn't, and then stepping fully into sobriety and wanting it to be more fun, acceptable, lots of different things that I didn't feel like it was, or when I was in recovery, that it was more about the internal independent recovery of self rather than connection and fun and rehabilitation into the world, the regular world. And I just thought we needed more spaces and events that took alcohol off the table completely so that it allowed everyone to show up in the same space, not just an opportunity for me to show up somewhere and choose not to drink. It's more like, yeah, that opportunity for everyone to be in the same headspace. And though that might feel awkward at first, there's I don't want to keep saying opportunity, but there's like that chance that people break through the awkwardness and actually connect on a deeper level than would be possible with alcohol being in our systems. So with all that being said, that's kind of where I started with Dry in the Desert, and just kind of started as a community, and then got involved with the non-alcoholic beverage industry on the brand side of a beverage brand. And that's when my eyes were really opened up to the industry itself, of like the non-alcoholic beverage industry, and it booming the way it is right now. And just the business side of those things, and like the industry side of that, and the brand side of it, and realizing that there were actually full non-alcoholic bars and bottle shops open in the country that I didn't even realize was a thing at the time. And so I think that's what's still happening today. And, like what I'm doing now, of now I've turned to being an online virtual bottle shop essentially, but specifically for the Phoenix and surrounding communities. Um, that some people might see me and think the same thing, where they're like, I didn't even realize that was a thing. So it's still kind of in that movement process of becoming more and more, but I think we're seeing more of it pop up around the country and in different ways and around the world, really, not just in the US. But yeah, that's how I operate now, is as an online bottle shop, which my true passion is really like finding that alcohol alternative for everyone. There's so many brands and like great drinks now that have no alcohol in it. The technology to make these drinks have improved incredibly, that they can actually taste good. They can replicate, an alcoholic flavor or not, depending what you're looking for. So I just really have a passion for empowering people to find that alternative for them, that they don't have to feel like they have nothing to drink if they don't want to choose alcohol for that evening, that month, whatever it might be. Um, so combining kind of that passion for the actual beverage itself and like social drinking in general, and then my passion for my community of Phoenix. That's why I don't right now ship anything outside of the state. It's not like an online retailer to go anywhere in the US. It's specifically for local delivery and pickup. I sometimes do pop-up bottle shops, so I'll pop up at other events and just like bring some of the inventory with me and do it that way. So there's a little more of an in-person experience. But yeah, it's all about affecting my community and where I'm at, with bridging the gap with these options and just providing more than what is out there currently, and providing some of those spaces where it's it is completely alcohol free social space, but not focused on just our mental health recovery or things like that. It's just more focused on the fun social aspect of things. So I know that was a mouthful and maybe more than you asked, but hopefully that gives like the whole scope of yeah, who I am and what I am doing currently.
Yeah, and you're doing some amazing things. And of course, and you see me jotting down so many questions because we're going to break this down. We're going to break this down because I think there's so much more to you besides what you do and, the title that we wear. And that leads me into my next question. If you were to say, take away all the titles, take away all the accomplishments, take away the trials and tribulations, who are you and why are you here?
Sure. Um, well, I'm a person who is trying to understand herself, and does that in different ways of connecting with others and with sharing myself. So that hasn't always been easy for me to do in words or with people. Um, I feel like I have gotten better at that through Dry in the Desert, through like sharing on social media. But for me, I was always a writer, so I was good at sharing my emotions, but really only in, my journal. um, so I think that's like feels like my grand venture on earth is trying to understand and convey what I'm experiencing. Um, I don't know if you probably are familiar with like Enneagram, and I'm a 4, which is like their great downfall. I don't know if you want to call it that, but is like feeling like they'll never be understood. And I think that that's my like what I'm always kind of trying to do. I'm either feeling that I'm not understood, or I'm trying to get people to understand. And um, but I think I feel that way because I know there's other people that feel the same way, that want to feel like they're seen and understood. And that is why I share very candidly and honestly and authentically. That doesn't always look like everyone else's share and like beliefs. But because I think there's other people that are feeling the same way, or like want to share in the same way and don't, because it's not as picture perfect. So hopefully that answers your question. That's as like philosophical as I feel like I could get about that question as to like why I'm here on on this earth and this body sort of thing. That's who I am, and like kind of my purpose seems to be my purpose from what I can gather from my experiences.
as it as it should be, and it doesn't have to be any level of depth to that question. And if you're listening to this and you're like, Jay, you asked that question to all your guests that come on, and I still can't answer that question, you got to really really think about that deeper purpose of just who you are. And like Ellie said, she's here to experience and convey, to feel and share that feeling with other people who may have a similar feeling. And it gets as simple as that. For me, I believe I exist to lead from generosity and unconditional love, but follow with care and understanding. Like that's why I'm here. Like I have to lead with generosity and love no matter what, under any circumstances or conditions, because I don't want to be held to anybody else's judgment. And so it comes to a point of, who are you and why are you here? And there's no determined depth to that question or to that answer, right? It's kind of what feels right in my soul, and that's what I'm here for, right? And that's so amazing. But I love something that you said there, is that it hasn't always been that easy, right? It hasn't always gotten to that place. And that's why I speak to those listening. If you're not at that place of clarity, let's back it up. Ellie, tell us about, who were you before you made the decision and commitment to start all of the grand adventures that you have with Dry in the Desert, leading and providing for your community? Who were you before this?
Well, that the Dry in the Desert journey comes with getting alcohol out of my life, right? So that I can't really separate that from getting sober. So I would speak more to who I was before quitting drinking alcohol, which would be just someone with less capacity for lots of things, just for life in general. I am someone who tends to get overwhelmed and anxious and all those. So I'm still those things, but with sobriety, I have much more capacity for others in my life, for events, to show up for people that I just wouldn't even have bothered trying to do that for. It wasn't necessarily that I wasn't uh, consistent or was flaky before, but I just wouldn't have even tried to make those connections and relationships stronger. So I think I didn't have as much capacity for life in general, and was a lot more selfish uh, before as well. So, and again, it is also tied to becoming a parent, where it's like I can't really separate, because a lot of that happened at the same time, where I'm not sure of whether I could have learned to be, or if I would have learned to be more selfless in the same way or at the same time, without those things occurring, without giving up alcohol, and going through a recovery program to where I could learn about those type of self-reflections and character defects and the good things and bad things sort of thing. So I think that's kind of who I was before. Just, I don't want it to sound in a bad way, or like that I wasn't great and wonderful and deserving of love before, but my world was just a little bit smaller. And I didn't realize that in that time period of my life. I felt, you could look at my life now and think I have more constraints with having children and not being as available to do this and that and the other, like that. Sometimes my free time like seems uh less of my own, or like less free time, but I think there's more of it than there was before, with that change of just self recovery and giving up some of those bad habits, and more like selfish habits is what I feel like they were to me. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, it does. And I think you beautifully articulated the thought, or the feeling of just having less capacity for life. Like that's extremely powerful. And it's not like you went through this drastic, and I mean, was a life change, right? Only thing it takes to change your life, guys, listening to this, is it change one thing that you do daily and your entire life will change, right? If that's add something daily or if that's subtract something daily, like your entire life will change. But of course, your life changed after making these decisions, but it's you were able to evolve, as in saying, I'm the same person, I just have more capacity. And it sounds like you have more capacity for quality versus quantity, like versus just filling your time with drinking activities, drinking buddies, or things like this, or just trying to fill it where you're looking for actual real connection into relationships and partnerships that expand one, your business, expand your lifestyle, your values, your beliefs, and things important to those people as well. So no, you articulated that
Yeah.
wonderfully.
Let
My
me add to that too, because just, yeah, like you're saying, I would add on to that, like the mental capacity is really what taking drinking away helped. Because it was, even if it didn't fill every second of my day, or that I wasn't an everyday drinker, even when I had scaled back, even after I had my first child, it was the like obsession and overthought of drinking and how can I fit it in and should I go do this because I can drink there, and those thoughts that were like, once that was taken away, then I often think about this, that I'm like, I don't think I could do dry in the desert or like any business like that without having stopping drinking, because there was no room for the amount of like busy I am now, which is just so much good busy. Like I often still get overwhelmed, like I said, but it's all good things. Like all all my kids' activities and them just existing, like so busy. I have a business, I have a part-time job too. It's like I can get stuck in oh, I'm stressed and overwhelmed, but I'm like, there's no part of this that makes me feel bad. I'm like, there's too many good opportunities. There's too many good things that I'm kind of have to like pick and choose what to follow, where I think that's beautiful and something to be grateful for, that before I wouldn't have been able to operate the same way I do now while drinking, where there's plenty of people who start businesses, and they drink too. It doesn't really have anything to do with that, but the kind of person that I am, like that took up so much mental capacity for me, and energy, and then yeah, just the wanting to commit to anything different or do something different, do something uncomfortable. That's not something I would have ever done prior to that.
that's that's I'm so happy you added that to that, because for me, I always say burnout doesn't occur from doing too much of something. It occurs from doing any amount of the wrong thing. So thinking about that statement and you trying to do dry in the desert and saying that you couldn't do that while drinking because it's misalignment. It's doing the wrong thing. And then eventually we'll get burnt out of trying to do this and do that. And I love how you speak to living in your purpose of doing things that are aligned with your values and your core beliefs. Like that's like me starting a makeup brand and I've never wore makeup a day in my life, right? I'm not
Hmm.
aligning my passion and my purpose with my values, right? So you trying to run dry in the desert or provide healthy alternatives to alcohol when you're drinking every night doesn't align, right? And so you almost have to become a different person to create an idea like this. And this is why I always say, guys, if you're listening to this, the vision doesn't change, it just expands, right? You had a vision of cutting back and then it expanded to being alcohol free. You had a vision of being alcohol free, then it expanded to dry in the desert. And then, wherever that's going to expand to. So the vision doesn't change. We have to allow room for interpretation, right? And where we're headed in that direction. I absolutely love that. Let me ask you, from starting this journey of being alcohol free or even cutting back to where you are now, what do you think your biggest lesson that you could extract from the experience that you have underwent throughout this process?
Um, hmm, so many. Hard to think of the biggest one. That's it. great thing to reflect on, I think. And I'll say the first thing that comes to mind is just, if I can give a little backstory of, there's
Absolutely.
been multiple attempts for me to cut drinking out of my life, and then falling back into that cycle of attempting to moderate with drinking instead, and then going back to alcohol free. So the last time, I currently have, I just celebrated like 500 days alcohol free, which is great. Yeah. So like almost a year and a half currently. And I've had a year and a half sober before, but prior to this. And I decided to try fitting alcohol into my life again. And so I spent a summer doing that, of like, kind of, yeah, planning out the drinks. And the funny part is that I don't think I ever got drunk that summer. It was all moderated drinking technically, but again, it started to take over my mental capacity of having to plan those drinks, only drinking when I planned, and then sometimes slipping up on that, drinking when I didn't plan to, and having to kind of question myself, why did I and why was that necessary? So I don't recommend that strategy for people to go back out and try drinking. It's like not lost on me that I didn't end up sliding back down the hill and going back to my old ways. But I will say was that like those 18 months prior to that were also not lost. So I had built up that voice in my head of a little bit more, like, you've created this beautiful life sober. That's kind of feels better than trying to like fit in some drinks now and then. Like, I could recognize the difference between that. So I think my piece of like advice for people is just to not get down on themselves if they are on that route of like trying to moderate drinking or cut it out altogether, and they find themselves like on this journey that most people do, where you're trying to quit and you don't, or like, that you have these slip ups and mess ups, that like the time before isn't lost. Like all of it is a learning, a part of the process. And like you still have that. If you're doing dry January right now and you mess up on the second week, or like even if you go back to drinking in February, like all that 30 days or time spent not drinking is like, you're stacking on to that. It's not lost just because you drink again. And because I think that can discourage people. So I think that can be applied to other things than just drinking alcohol. It doesn't have to be that way for everyone, because that might not be everyone's goal, but it's just an example as far as to when we have mess ups, that like the time we spent trying and the time we spent doing one certain thing is all like part of the learning process, and to give ourselves grace in that area. So there's probably a lot of other huge lessons and things I could share on the sober journey for sure, but I think that can apply to anyone who's making a life change and going through something that can be deeply personal like that, where we might beat ourselves up for mistakes or like for setbacks. And that's what I learned was, even though I had to start my day count over, it's like that wasn't really the important part of my journey. Like that part doesn't really equate to where those 18 months is when I like worked a recovery program, and my life changed during those 18 months. That's when I really like took sobriety seriously. Even though I did drink alcohol again, that's when like the biggest change in my life occurred. And that's how I was able to look back on it and like decide to choose it again, because I had created something so beautiful that it wasn't worth like jeopardizing my mental health or my family or anything. So yeah.
That's that's so good to say that it's all part of a learning process like that, and that's a huge lesson to pull out of that night. And like people look at me in February, I'll be 7 years alcohol free, right? February 5th. And they're like, Jay, wow, I wish I could do that when I was your. I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. Do you know what I have to learn in order to get here? Right? Like, I didn't just wake up one day and was like, you know what? From this point on, I'm going to be alcohol free. It was bumping my head against the wall. It was, and I learned the hard way, guys. Like, I learned the in the jail, blacking out, waking up, DW, like bad, like the bad way. Like, I learned the bad, but that's still part of the learning process. Now, do I give myself grace? Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, I had to, it takes some people going a little further than others. And I'm not saying, guys, that you have to wait till you get to a rock bottom in order to change those ways, but take reflection on what you've learned in the other times that you have questioned your relationship with alcohol. Take note of what you learned throughout the process of abstaining from alcohol. Take note of what you've learned from cutting back or moderating from when it comes to alcohol. Or maybe, and this can apply with business too, guys, business and leadership, and thinking about when we're making decisions for our company, when we're making decisions for our organization, when we're making decisions for the people that we serve. What did we learn last time we were up against this process, right? As we had in going into Amplify in Scottsdale, I had to take into account what I learned from Amplify in Canyon Lake, California. It's like, okay, what do we learn there? How can we do it better this time moving forward? If we embrace the process, you know what the problem is? You know what the problem is, Ellie? Now you done got me going. The problem is, right, is that we overestimate the event and we underestimate the journey. And I think we should flip that of overestimating the process and the journey and underestimating the event. Because every time we hit that milestone, we're like, great, we did it. Now what, right? We're still more hype about the
Yep.
journey. So tell me about the process about you or what you think about that.
Yeah, well, right when you said that, I saw something, I think from another podcast clip, like on social media, of just that, like, whatever your goal is, you should be just as happy now as you will be when you achieve it. And that in it, like, I didn't really listen to anything else, but it just made sense to me right then and there that kind of like I have a goal of, going full time with my business and having other streams of income and like making it a viable business that I can live off of. That I'm like, well, I can't be unhappy now and think that like by achieving that I will be happy, because you reach that achievement and you might think like great and be happy for a second, but like then there's nothing after the achievement. Like the achievement doesn't really get you much. Like maybe I'll have less financial stress or things like that, but that just made a lot of sense to me when I heard that, was that like I should be as happy now as I will be once I have that. Because yeah, like you're saying, it's like that is it's the same thing as what you're saying, is that the journey is like the important part and like the part to focus on, and like building something that matters to you and that lasts and things like that, rather than like achieving the X number or whatever the achievement is, honestly. So that's the first thing that really popped in my head, and I feel like that I acknowledge now, that I'm like, okay, I can say I'm happy and like kind of act in happiness. I'm not, always happy with my situations or things like that. But when you can act in gratitude or in happiness, like that's the only way to have that. We can't tell ourselves like we should be grateful for something. We should be grateful for our health. Should be grateful that like I woke up breathing today. It's like acting with gratitude that is the only way you're going to feel gratitude. So I don't know if that makes much sense, but that's something I like try to practice more by acting in it, rather than just saying like, oh yeah, I should be like grateful that I'm healthy or that my kids are healthy. Um, but acting more in that, I think that just means enjoying it more in the process, rather than always looking to the future or to like what we don't have. So I've been trying to practice that a little bit more myself. And I think that that is kind of the overarching takeaway I get from it, is that like the goal is the goal and might be necessary financially or for whatever, or health reasons or whatever the reason, but that like we need to practice the happiness along the way, not think that we'll get that once we achieve the goal.
That is exactly what that is about. That is, and when you instantly said that, it made me think of somebody getting plastic surgery. They have a goal to look better, right? Or look a certain way, or whatever that may be. But, the real question lies in, are you just as happy if they deny you for the surgery? Right? And because in most places
Yep.
where people have to go through to get plastic surgery, they have to be approved for it, and the doctor has to say it's safe to work on. Did this, even though you make this the goal, are you just as happy if you get denied that, right? And where we are, and do we still love ourselves enough with who we are? And then you also made me think of the what I call the expectation gap. So there's eight there's eight growth gaps when we're attacking personal growth, and one of them happens to be the expectation gap. It should look like this. It should look like that. It should feel like this. It should feel like that, right? Every time we put should in there, every time we interject should, we create this gap between where we are and where we want to be. And it's called resentment. We create resentment between that, and living in gratitude is not possible. Where I should be grateful for this, and now you're just mad because you're not grateful for it, right? And that's what you're
Mm-hmm.
reinforcing. And so we need to be sitting in the gratitude of finding what am I grateful for, and focusing and growing on those things. That's huge, right? And so let me ask you, you said you just celebrated 500 days of being alcohol free, of going down this change, right? What is driving your decision to continue now that you've hit that milestone?
The fact that I feel better without alcohol, I think it is all the trial and error of that whole journey that has just shown me and proven to me that like alcohol does not belong in my life. Um, and I really owe it to that. So I can say I owe it to myself of like continuing to get back up and try again. Because it really has been the journey and all the experiences leading up to it, up to today, that keeps me going, is that I just know for sure now. And I think when people have rely on substances for whatever reason might be, whether it's social, coping, celebratory, whatever the reason, when you like rely on it, it's difficult to let it go, and it's hard to create new habits. So it takes a lot of that like trial and error that I think that's how most people operate. But I would say it's a combination of that, of just like my experiences finally showing me that like it's just not going to work. Sorry. And then having these other pieces of my life of a business now, of my children, whether they continued to be here or not, like I would never go back to not having children, if that makes sense. So it's like this is just now the new version of me that is best operating sober. And I think the recovery part of it, like I said, like dry in the desert, I focus on the social fun part of it. But for me, recovery is an important part personally for me, that that has been what's changed my life significantly, of working on myself rather than just cutting out alcohol. It's like obviously alcohol, I think a lot of us know, but some maybe don't if they haven't like examined their relationship with alcohol, just that we it's a symptom of the problem. So our problems are our problems, and then drinking is a symptom or a coping mechanism of it, that just taking it away doesn't fix anything, and a lot of times makes things feel much worse. And that's when we have to like address those things. So I think that is what has really changed, given me that capacity and given me the fullness I get to feel in my life now. So I just think for me now, it's like too many experiences and too much knowledge to ever go back to that. But it's not to say it's not tempting, or that like the thoughts cross my mind, but that's when it's important to like rely on all the tools and experiences I've had to say no, it's worth it to keep going and to just stay sober today, because I that's what I do, is just choose each day, you know. That's the easiest way to go about it.
That's so good. Like there are temptations, and me, even being where I am in my journey, almost 7 years into it, I still am tempted by certain things. There's still triggers, there's still things, but like you said, I dig into those tools and those experiences to keep me going forward and moving forward. I think about, okay, what is the cost of me going backwards? Like, how much would that really, really cost me? Not just monetary, but character, to my personal brand, to the business of it. What's the cost of going backwards versus the cost of going forward? Missing a night out, leaving a little
Yeah,
early, right? What's the cost of going
exactly.
forward? The cost of going forward is a lot smaller than the cost of going backwards. And I'm not designed to go backwards. We're gonna go forward. So I love the way that you actually put that it's the experiences that I've built, the trial and error that I've learned from myself. It's nothing external that's keeping her motivated, guys. When you're listening to this, I need you to think about how can I draw from my experiences, my insight, the things that I've learned. And the greatest tool for turning experiences into insight, get ready, write this one down: reflection. Reflection. The biggest tool from turning
100%.
from turning
Yeah. I will
experiences to insight, right?
I will say that, yeah, like if maybe that should have been my answer to like the one piece of advice I could give, or like the biggest learning was like I said, I'm like a journaler, a writer, and like that I went to put together when I was on my like first kind of recovery journey. I went to put together my old journals, and I was like, I'm gonna like type everything up I wrote that had to do with like my struggles with alcohol. And it's kind of sad. It was kind of sad to like read back and like realize I was going through those things. But it was so powerful to see the amount of times I kept writing the same thing. Like that I was like, oh, I'm depressed and I feel like I can't stop drinking, or like that I need to stop drinking. And then I would write that, and then like 6 months later write the same thing, or a year later write the same thing. And it was like, so like as a outsider look, you're like, oh, that's like, I feel bad for that girl, but like that was what gave me so much of like the, man, I really keep repeating this cycle. Like, when am I gonna learn? Like, it became obvious. And so, yeah, however you use the power of reflection, like reflective journaling to me has been like so eye-opening to that cycle I kept putting myself in, that like, especially as a substance user, we tend to have those like built-in forgetters of how bad it was, like how this and that. We think like we weren't that bad of a drinker, quote unquote, like you said, we're comparing stories to people who have lost everything and like etc. And for me, it's all just about like the inner peace of like, if you're not feeling good using the substance, like you should stop. But as a person using the substance, like when you're using it because you don't feel good, it's very hard to get out of that cycle. But yeah, I would say like reflection is so huge on anything, and that goes for, yeah, things that don't have to do with drinking either. But for me, yeah, that was a big piece of it, and a big realization that I just never would have, like, I don't know if I would have come to terms with. I had been through this multiple times, because you just like forget all the things you've been through if you aren't taking time to reflect on it, or to record it and read back later.
That's huge. That's huge. That's huge. And I love that you even mentioned the word record, right? Because a lot of people will think reflection. Oh, Jay, I'm not a journaler. I'm not a writer. Yo, we got iPhones. Open up your iPhone. I always tell people, make a phone call to your future self. If you can make a 15-second phone call to your future self, what would you say? What you say, right? And so, like, when we're able to either somehow transcribe our experiences, look at them, extract lessons from them, and then apply it to our lives, that's reflection, and that's turning experiences into insight. So and that's the most powerful tool I've used. Ellie's here to say that's one of the most powerful tools that she's used, and not just for a writer, for somebody who like me is a speaker. You give me a pen and paper and tell me to write an essay, Ellie, I'm promise you, I'm handing you back a blank sheet of paper. You tell me to write to give you a keynote, I can talk for 120 minutes. But it's the fact that I still found ways to be reflective, and so can anybody listening to this podcast. This has been absolutely amazing. Ellie, I want to go into some rapid questions, just to end on a lighter note, right? Of us to just open it up.
Sure.
Dope. You ready? You ready?
Yep. Ready.
Okay. If your sobriety had a smell, what would it be?
Oh my God. That's not this isn't rapid at all, a rapid answer. I'm like, that was not the question I was expecting. So,
I guess my rapid equals random. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, that makes me feel a little less pressure of like answering the first thing that comes to mind. I'm like seeing my pile of laundry and I'm thinking, clean laundry is a good smell and makes me feel like my house is in order, my life is in order maybe, but I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah, I would just say maybe like a breath of fresh air, or like fresh flowers blooming. Let's say that. So
I love
maybe
it.
fresh laundry, but more so the natural version, like a fresh whiff of blooming flowers is kind of what it feels like, at least.
I love it. I'm a rock with it. Here's a better one. If you were a pizza topping, what kind of pizza topping would you be?
Ooh, I like that one. But hard to pick. Let's say a jalapeno. Like I like spicy and unassuming. I don't know. Like, yeah, I guess you assume a jalapeno is going to be spicy, but it's it's small and seems not harmful. But yeah, I would say I don't even like jalapenos on my pizza, but if I were one, I think we'll go with that.
I love it. I love it. And last question. If I was to offer you the phrase "Don't touch my mindset," what comes to mind?
Hmm. Not being influenced by others or using comparison to others. So I don't know if it really comes to mind, yeah, of like someone else not touching my mindset, but of myself not comparing myself to others, because in that way that I'm allowing someone in to affect my mindset.
Absolutely. And truly, that's what it's all about, is that we're not going to let anybody else is experiences, trauma, poison, whatever they want, affect who we are, where we're headed, or who we are becoming, right? Our mindset, what our mind is set on. So one, Ellie, I just want to say thank you for coming onto the show, being a part of the show. Thank you. Like Ellie will be in Scottsdale next week with us. She's already there. I'm the one who's coming to Scottsdale. So I'm super excited for the workshop that's coming up. If you're interested in being there, you have tickets in the show links. Ellie, if you would, please tell everybody where they can connect with you, how they can find out more about Dry in the Desert and everything that you have to offer.
Yes, definitely connect with me on Instagram. It's just Dry in the Desert, all one word together. I'm on Instagram all the time and answering DMs, and that's where I do like all my business. So you can definitely find my website. And if you're local to Phoenix or to Arizona, dryinthedesert.com is where you can order from my virtual bottle shop. Like I said, I have pickup and delivery options. So if you want to try some non-alcoholic beverages, if you have questions about any, definitely reach out. via email or Instagram. Email, same thing, dryinthedesert at gmail.com. And yeah, if you can come out to the Amplify workshop, I'm going to be there handing out drinks probably a majority of the day, but specifically in the VIP section too, we have like a specially curated menu that I think is going to be really cool for people to experience, like some new brands, some new drinks, and just like a more elevated experience. So yeah, I'm super excited to work with you, Jay, and thanks for having me on. I feel like we could have talked for a million hours. So this was awesome. And yeah, I'd be back anytime.
Yeah, this is phenomenal. We're definitely going to have you back. And please, 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 if you're in the Phoenix, Scottsdale, Tampa, Macy, Arizona area, check out the Amplify workshop. I'm super excited. Thank you guys. Until next time, please stay focused, stay inspired, stay connected, and please, 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 don't let anyone touch you.